Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we are going to be doing the final part of the Commodore restoration series that I started months and months ago that I have been not really procrastinating on, but I've just had a lot of other stuff going on, including this room and what's behind me. In fact, even a lot has changed since the last video I uploaded, which was the 2-year vlog style video I did. But anyway, yes, part 3 of the Commodore restoration series. As a quick recap of what it was, I had finally had found some Commodore machines to restore for the retro game room down here, a Commodore 64 and 2 Commodore VIC-20s. One was a earlier model revision of the Commodore VIC-20, and the other one was a very late revision VIC-20. And I'll put some video clips up here in the corner of what I did. But basically, the first one was the Commodore 64 that I tore apart. Tore the keyboard apart, and unfortunately in both part 1 and 2 I had this problem of lost footage, which I finally figured out what that problem was. It was my old computer, which I've built a new one since then. But either way, we started with my Commodore 64 here by tearing it apart, making sure that everything looked good on the inside, tearing the keyboard apart, cleaning it up. That's where some lost footage was, and some of the other lost footage was me doing a retrobrite on this because it was extremely the light isn't picking up. In fact, I have better light in here than I do in my workbench, but my workbench showed it being extremely yellowed. So I retrobrited all 3 machines because I was intending to restore all 3 of them. This one in particular, when I retrobrited it, the bottom case turned out immaculate, turned out gorgeous. It's still kind of a cream color, but I think it's good enough. The top section, though, this is where my retrobrite failure came from. And I love my new camera. It's showing all the swirls. It's marbled. I couldn't quite figure out what had caused this because the other 2 VIC-20, the other two cases and the bottom part of this retrobrited just fine. And I actually used the submersion method, not the cream method, because I had kind of heard that if you're not on top of it, like every 15 minutes massaging the cream around and stuff, and I was afraid I was going to not be able to be around every second, so I put in submerged solution of water and the developer liquid. I believe I used 30% developer, I believe, but that doesn't matter. Either way, it came out marbled. Not just the top casing, though. The keys are also marbled as well, which I cannot explain that because I never retrobrited the keys. When I was reading up on forums and stuff of how to retrobrite things, or at least a better way to retrobrite things, right away there was people saying do not retrobrite anything dark colored, like dark colored keys, dark colored cases, chassis, bits of plastic, because it will marble, which makes no sense as to why these marbled, because I never retrobrited these. I just clean them up with glass cleaner. Garden Variety, go to the store, get the blue bottle glass cleaner. You know, the Windex knockoffs or whatever. So the only thing I could possibly think of as to why this marbled was possibly maybe somebody sprayed or wiped some sort of like vinyl or plastic conditioner or something on it, and it soaked into the plastic. And even using glass cleaners and baking soda to scrub the surface of it, it didn't get deep enough into the plastic to remove it, and it reacted with the UV, light and the retrobrite. But anyway, that's the only idea I have. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. All I know is it came out looking marbled, which I'm going to keep it this way. I'm not going to try and fix this. Apparently there's going to be ways to fix it. I don't feel the need to. It gives it a unique part of my collection, which is, it's a thing. I also started restoring the VIC-20s around the exact same time. Now, both VIC-20s were in really good shape. One had a broken off 3 key, which I thought I had, but turns out I didn't have. And the only reason why that's a big issue is because the newer style VIC-20 had a newer style keyboard. It was a kind of a membrane style that, kind of like most modern keyboards have now. And the older VIC-20 had the older style keyboard with springs underneath each one. The older style one worked just fine. And in fact, I was going to restore that one fully, which I did. Kind of. That's the change of plans thing here with part 3. But I had gotten a comment saying that it would be better to restore the newer VIC-20, this one. And the reason is because both this and the Commodore 64 both use the exact same power supply, which I did not have one. I had the original one off the 64, and stupidly, I will admit, I was using it to test the Commodore 64 and this VIC-20 to make sure they functioned. I was constantly checking my voltages with this to make sure that it had the appropriate voltages on both rails, which it did. But he kind of recommended, one of the comments recommended that I restore this one, because that way when I want to switch between my 64 and my VIC-20 here on my little desk here, because I don't have much space down here, I'd love to have them all set up with each individual screens, power supplies, and disk drives, but that's just not feasible in my small area here. It'd be better to restore this because then I could just use one power supply. And also there was something, he mentioned something about the other style, which is a 2-prong power supply, the old style. It only outputs 9 volt AC. The 5 volt DC has circuitry right here in the top vent section that will convert it down to the 5 volt DC that all the chips need. In theory, that makes the power supply part of it and the computer itself more reliable, because you don't have to worry about the external power supply having a voltage spike like the OE ones for the 64 do. And then that is kind of true. That is mostly true that the power supply section that's more reliable. The problem is because all the 5 volt transforming stuff is inside the machine, that means that there is a failure, it's inside the machine, and it would need major electrical work to fix that should it go bad. And even though I'm decent at electrical repair, I'm not Parafractics, I'm not 8-bit guy, I'm not any of those, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart to fix one of those machines. So the change of plans was, I took all the good parts, including the good VIC chip and the good CPU, because this machine had them not working, and I popped them inside of this machine's board. They're completely compatible, they're completely, workable, so I didn't have to worry about that. Plus, I also took the keyboard out of that machine and put in this one. And now I have a fully functional Commodore VIC-20. Now that one is missing a keyboard now. I had the old broken keyboard mechanism in the box with that one, along with all the keys and the springs and everything I need for that one. So I can, if I ever find another parts VIC-20 that has a good video chip and CPU, or just a video chip, because the CPUs are dirt cheap on eBay. The video chips are the big pricey ones, kind of like the SID chips for the 64. Then someday I will restore that one and put it back to working order, because I think it's neat I have both an old model and a new model. The other reason why I wanted to restore, why this one I'm happier this one works, is because the cartridge slot where the cartridges goes in at has a bent pin right in the middle of the edge connector. And I could easily fix that, but I don't want to run into any issues of desoldering on that board until I get a better desoldering equipment. So that's the change of plans from part 2 to 3, because I said I was going to restore both machines, but I'm just going to restore just 2 machines, the 64 and the VIC-20, which I did. They're now fully working. I'm going to show them working on this lovely, because I finally found a monitor, a nice classic Commodore 1802, which it is yellowed, so now it kind of more matches my yellowed VIC-20, which yes, this has been retro-brighted. It's actually been retro-brighted twice. And the more I retro-bright it, there's little black specks pretty deep into the plastic. I'm not sure what it was from. So this VIC-20 I actually got from a gentleman pretty local to me. He ran a ham radio setup. And this thing was just sitting on a bench in his garage, which is why I had a broken off key, because something fell on it. Luckily it didn't break nothing else. But yeah, it was in a garage with environment around cars and old greasy equipment. So it's not surprising there's some deep bedded black flecks. I got it all basically cleaned up and as best looking as I'm going to. But the whole point of this video is I'm going to be building a Commodore 64 power supply, which we're going to go back in time to do that, because I actually did all that yesterday. I just forgot to record this intro section and the outro section. So let's build a power supply. So with the power supply thing with Commodore 64s, it's actually, there's a couple different ways to do it. In fact, I was about to say 3 different ways to do this. There's actually 4 now. The first method is to just buy a new brick, which is a community-built and designed power supply that completely replaces this non-serviceable unit with a basically drop-in, plug-in replacement that has off-the-shelf electronics components built into the housing that allows you to repair them and replace them if they go bad. I say if because apparently they're actually stupidly reliable. The second method is to basically do the same concept as the new brick, basically getting all the electronics components together and building it in a project box that outputs the correct voltages. This is another very good way of doing it, but it takes a little bit more, it takes a lot of technical know-how and electrical, you have to trust your soldering skills. The third way of doing it is the way I'm going to be doing it, and that is building a power supply using off-the-shelf, and readily available parts to build a quick, down and dirty, cheap one, just until, long enough to either, use it permanently, because apparently they last for a while, or until I can afford to get a new brick. The fourth style I have very recently heard about. In fact, I just heard about this basically the past 2 or 3 days. There is a new project out there that you cut this old power supply open and remove the circuitry from inside of it, remove the wire leads, and solder the wire leads to that, and put all the electronics back into the original housing, super gluing it back together, making it look like an original power supply. Basically be an original power supply with all new electrical components inside. I have not seen pricing on this yet because I just recently learned about it and I really didn't do too much digging into it. But apparently that's a way to do it to make it look like the OE power supply. And I do want to mention something real quick. This does not affect the value of a Commodore. It doesn't. In fact, almost every Commodore collector will tell you to throw these freaking bricks away. Like, just toss it. Which is why I had to dig this out of the trash. Because I actually did toss it. Because the very last time I used this, after the part 2, I actually powered my Commodore up because I wanted to test my 1802 monitor to see if it worked. And it did work. When I unplugged it though, I decided I wanted to test the voltages, and it creeped up. The output voltage of this was getting dangerously close to 6 volts. It was like, I think, I don't think it crossed the 6 volt line, but I think it actually was getting close. I think it was 5.7, 5.8 volt, when usually these put out about, if I remember correctly, like 5.1, 5.2. Now that could just be a electrical variance, but that does tell me that the 5 volt is essentially creeping up. And anything past, I think it's 6.2 volt, 6.3 volt on these chips will fry them instantly. So this is getting close up there to being dangerous. So we're going to build a power supply and get rid of that. So for the parts you're going to need for this is a wall wart. So basically this is a 9 volt AC 1000 milliamp or 1 amp AC brick. This is essentially almost identical to what the original brick's putting out anyway, about 1 milliamp. You can find these anywhere. You can buy them online. You can find them just about anywhere. I think, in fact, a lot of people were saying to use the NES power brick. I don't want to do, because I like my NES working. So this one is actually off of a US Robotics modem. Kind of laying around. Another thing you'll need is this. Now this can change vastly because you need 9 volt AC, but you also need 5 volt DC. Now I wonder if that sounds really familiar. That's basically any USB wall wart has capability of outputting 5 volt DC, but you need a certain amperage. You actually need about somewhere between 1 to 2 amp. The higher the amperage, the better, because that means it'll run a little bit cooler. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any USB wall plugs that I can just sacrifice. Or I should say that my wife will let me sacrifice. So, I found an old router in my box of junk parts that has a 5 volt DC, 2 amp power plug. So the idea is here, we're going to cut these barrel plugs off and wire them directly into the 5-pin DIN here to get the voltages we need. So let's get that figured out. All right, now the good thing is this power supply still does technically work. So I can at least see which of these pins does what before I just cut. Volt DC. Okay, so I got the right voltages in that, or the right schematics now. We're just going to somehow that almost pained me to do that. But there's a reason why I cut it off a little bit longer, just in case this could be useful at some point. And I also did a little bit of research. What I've discovered is, on this power supply anyway, this is not going to be the same on every Commodore 64 power supply. Blue and black are AC. So these are what the AC brick's going to be plugged into or spliced into. The tan and black are DC. Now from what I can tell, I do not believe that the AC one is polarized. I do not believe. But the 5-volt DC is polarity sensitive. So black has to go to ground or DC negative, and tan is DC plus. So I've actually plugged this one in and very carefully figured out its polarity. So we're going to splice these together using these butt connectors. Now I want to clarify real quick. This is not a permanent solution. I am only doing this to make sure this works. I will clean this up and fix this much later. Actually, this is only temporary until I can get a new brick. There's a gentleman actually in my state that I got in contact with. That sells new bricks. Alright, and the final piece of the puzzle, at least for this, is an extension cord. So hopefully this works. Obviously first I'm actually going to plug it in without verifying that the voltages are right. So that's ugly. But we'll see. Power light comes on. So that's plug it into my monitor and see if it works. Okay, and so now that we're back in time, here is my really crappily built Commodore 64 and VIC-20 power supply. The 9-volt AC transformer and the 5-volt DC plug here. I did fix the wiring and get it correct. It turns out I actually had 2 wires backwards. So part of my diagnosing stuff was, like I said, don't try this at home unless you're actually comfortable with using electricity and cutting and splicing. And you have a good quality digital multimeter. Those cheap $5 or $10 ones you get at like part stores. I've had them before. They work okay, but you just can't beat a good digital multimeter. This one's, it's a Snap-on branded one. It's mine from work when I work on cars. It's actually a rebranded Fluke, and Fluke makes some of the best, or well, I'm not going to say they make some of the best because not sponsored here, but I've always used Fluke multimeters in automotive. They're kind of like the de facto go-to multimeter for automotive, but this one had all the stuff I needed, so I brought it from work. But yeah, don't try this at home unless you're comfortable around it. If you don't feel comfortable around it, I did mention when in the When Back in Time section that there's 3 other ways to do this. There's taking the power supply completely apart and replacing the board entirely with a new manufactured one with new parts that I've seen out there. I haven't seen any prices on that yet. Or you can just buy a new brick because that's easily the best option. Or you can just buy all the electrical components you need, the AC to DC stuff, and all the transistors and resistors you need. Look at wiring diagrams and schematics, and build a power brick. This is a nice cheap way for me to get this working so that I can say now I have a working VIC-20 and a working 64 so I can review some games. So let's quit screwing around and just hook this up and show it working. Okay, so first let's try the VIC-20. Power plug. All right. The high-pitched hum of a CRT. Look at that! It works! Oh, 1 second, let me... That is wreaking havoc with my recording. Okay, so the roar pattern here is not seen on CRT, nor is the flashing. That's not seen, but okay, so the VIC-20 works just fine. I think. Let's try a game real quick. We'll try Jupiter Lander. What's really weird about this is I remember this game being on like some people who are my age would know. There was a website where you could play like math games. And it was called Lunar Lander, and it had a Jupiter level like this. And look at that. It works just fine. Let's turn the volume up. Oh. Oh, it uses WASD. No, it doesn't. So anyway, apparently I need to learn the controls of Jupiter Lander. But yeah, now let's try the VIC-20, or the Commodore 64. I'm really excited for this to work, because I've been wanting this to work for a long time. Because there's a couple games I want to play that I never got a chance to, because my Commodore didn't work. So, let's try it. Power switch. I need to fix this TV. It works, kinda. Okay. So the thing is, the annoying thing is now my monitor is not working. But to be fair, I haven't really tried it. It did work the other day. I don't know what's going on with the power button, or with the weird thing why the space bar needs more than it needs to, but so let's try a game. Invaders of the Lost Tomb. Yeah, I'm going to be reviewing this because this is way too much oddity to not. Alright, so I'm going to go load. Comma 8. So yeah, the Commodore 64 does work. The 1541 does work. This monitor somewhat works, and my VIC-20 fully works. So I am now 100% happy. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching this video, the final part of the Commodore restoration series. This has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to get this done forever. I just, with everything else going on, especially down here in the game room and some other stuff going on, I just kept putting it off. But I needed to get it done because I want to get all the unfinished stuff from the past 2 years, basically done, because I want to start reviewing some games. I want to start playing some games for the channel. If I cannot get this stupid thing to work, I might just swap it out for an LCD little TV that I have, which is something I might actually do. I don't know. I am going to start reviewing some games with this that I can find, because the next thing I want to do is get a SD to IEC device for both this and the VIC that they'll share. And at some point I want to get a penultimate cartridge for the VIC-20, but that's going to be a little bit. So yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching the third part of the Commodore Restoration Series, the final part of the Commodore Restoration Series, which has been a long time coming. I've made a lot of changes to plans to both these machines since part 1. But yeah, now that I can start working, I can start reviewing some games. I'm just not sure what game to review yet for the first one I want to review for it, but it might be something kind of cool. But yeah, if you have any comments or you want to see anything else about the Commodores here, or me, or you have any questions you want me to explain, I'll be more than happy to explain them. Or if you want to see me review a certain game, I don't have many games for my VIC-20 or my C64 yet besides a small stack of VIC-20 games. This is really all I have for the VIC. I have one cartridge for the 64. I don't remember what happened to it right now because everything kind of got shuffled around when I was doing stuff down here. But anyway, if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channels, and hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload more content. Any interaction with the channel helps it grow so that I can make bigger and better videos like I have been doing. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.